Welcome to Cover Stories with Chess Life, the U.S. Chess Federation's podcast that goes behind the scenes and more in depth about each month's Chess Life magazine cover story. Make sure to listen to our family of U.S. Chess podcasts, which includes One Move at a Time on the second Tuesday of each month, where Dan Lucas talks to people who are advancing our mission statement, Ladies' Night, which drops on the third Tuesday of each month, hosted by our women's program director, Jennifer Shahade, and on the fourth Tuesday of each month, Chess Underground, hosted by our assistant director of national events, Pete Karagianis, in which he examines the game's eccentricities, peculiarities, and theoretical novelties. All can be found at the podcast link on Chess Life Online at uschess.org, or you can subscribe via iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Today's guest on Cover Stories with Chess Life is the author of our July cover story on the 2022 National High School Championship, which was held in Memphis, Tennessee in April. He's also the author of a series on the Torah Defense that will wrap in our August issue, and he has written quite a few pieces for U.S. publications, U.S. chess publications these past few years. Alex King is a teacher, a player, and a father, currently residing in Memphis, Tennessee with his wife and daughter. He comes from a very talented family with musicians and artists of multiple stripes, including his sister Caroline, who was the photographer at the 2022 National High School and whose photo graces the cover of this issue. Seriously, folks, she did an amazing job. She blew away our expectations. So if you need a photographer, hire Caroline King. Alex, for his part, is a skilled pianist, and he often posts videos of his original compositions to his social media accounts. I'm speaking to Alex today after having the toughest time scheduling this interview. He was on vacation. I was on vacation. We both had conflicts. But now we've cleared time to talk. And I expect to learn a lot about Alex in the time we have. Newly minted FIDE Master, Alex King. Welcome to Cover Stories with Chess Life. From where am I speaking to you today?
So I am here in Memphis, Tennessee, in my house, where I do all my work, all my teaching, my writing, my scheming, even my piano playing. So thanks very much for having me on the podcast, John. It's an honor, and I look forward to our conversation.
I am excited to have you here. Now, it's funny. I feel like I know you mostly because of social media, but in truth, we have only met once. And do you remember where that was?
That's right. Yeah, we met at the St. Louis Chess Club. I don't know what year that was, maybe 2017 or something like that.
I want to say 2019 because
2019. Oh, later than I thought. Okay, got it. Yeah, what tournament was that? Wasn't that like the U.S. Championship / U.S. Junior / U.S. Senior or something, or was that a different tournament?
I'm not sure if it was the championship or the juniors and seniors, but yeah, I walked in and there he is, and I was like, my God, it's Alex King. I know that guy.
Yeah, we had a selfie together, which I can picture. So
it broke the internet.
Yeah, it feels like it's been 5 years since that time, but only
yes.
in pandemic years. So
the temporality of pandemic living, we could talk about it for hours. Let's talk about your cover story, and then I want to talk about the Tarrasch series.
Yeah.
So you wrote. I think a really nice overview and summary of the 2022 National High School Championship, which by luck happened to be in Memphis. Tell us about your general impressions of the event and what it felt like to see a national tournament in your hometown.
Well, I enjoyed the event a lot. So as I write about in my article, I was present at the event on behalf of the Dalton School from New York City, and their program director, Beatrice Marinello, invited me to assist her in coaching the Dalton squad at the tournament for the weekend. I don't work with the Dalton program regularly or anything, and I haven't in the past either, although I know some of the individual kids. But yeah, she was looking for someone to assist the team for the weekend. And since I live in Memphis, she asked me. I've worked for Beatrice in the past at some other school programs and stuff for her nonprofit. And so we knew each other for a while from when I was living in New York. And so, yeah, I was happy to do it. I was happy to be able to, be at a big tournament like this for the whole time and get to see the action close up. So, yeah, I mean, the tournament seemed like it went really well. I got to see a lot of people in person who I had never seen in person before. Like, I met Dan Lucas in person for the first time. We had known each other virtually for years, but I finally got to meet him. I met Carol Meyer, and I met a lot of people who I hadn't. And I also, got to see some other people who I have met before, but I hadn't seen for a while, Jen Shahadi and a bunch of other people. So yeah, overall, the tournament was really fun. And as I say in my article, the last time I was at a high school nationals was like when I was in high school, I think, in 2007, Kansas City, I think. So yeah. So it's been a while, and it was great to be back with the energy of all the kids and the competition and everything. I enjoyed it a lot. And then also, the Dalton did very well in the tournament. They won the top section as a team. And so that was awesome to be able to, kind of ride that wave of success.
What is it like working as a coach at an event like this? And in particular, working with such a prestigious, high-octane program like Dalton. Is there a lot of pressure on you? Or, do you feel responsible for the wins and losses?
Well, everybody, Beatrice and the parents and the kids, I don't think any of them were putting pressure on me if I, didn't measure up, that I was going to, be blamed for anything less than success or anything like that. There was no negative pressure like that. But I think there was a lot of positive pressure in that, all these kids and the parents and Beatrice are just they're just all highly performing individuals, that they aspire to be the very best. And so they have a lot of sort of natural, healthy pressure on themselves to just do the best they can. And so that was great. That was awesome to get to work with these kids. Dalton has there were maybe 7 or 8 kids at the tournament from Dalton. And one of them, their top player, FM Gus Houston, is about the same rating as me, or maybe, approximately. And, there were several kids, I feel like all of the kids in the program are better than I was when I was their age. So, it was just, I was just really impressed by the kids and how well they played. And as far as my role, I was helping them prepare their openings for specific games. I was helping them analyze their games afterward, and giving them, psychological and sporting insights, and, making sure to encourage them to get rest and eat in between rounds and stuff like that. Of course, their parents were all doing a great job of that already. So, and same thing with Beatrice. So, yeah, it was a great experience working with them. I really enjoyed it.
Now, your sister, Caroline, did the photography for the event. And I would suspect, I would actually lay very good money that this is the first time in U.S. chess history to have a brother and sister doing the cover and the cover story. We're hoping to talk to her. We're going to try to make that work and insert this somewhere into the podcast. But just in case we don't, how did she get involved in this whole mess?
Yeah, well, Dan Lucas had put out the sort of open call for photographers in Memphis, and I guess in Columbus and the other nationals of the season. And I think he hadn't gotten any takers in Memphis. And so he contacted me directly because he knew that I was in Memphis, and asked me if I had a photographer recommendation in town. And I do know some photographers in town, but I selfishly wanted to take the opportunity to get Caroline to come visit me and my family for the weekend and get her the gig. And so, I sent Dan her website, and he really dug her stuff, and she was available, and all the logistics were worked out, and so yeah, she did the gig and stayed with us, and it was just fantastic. I had a great time.
Yeah, it's it was startling looking at the photos as they came in, just how good they were. And certainly not to, I'm not trying to compare to any of the other photographers we've had, but I think definitely in my time with US Chess, these were some of the best photos I've had taken for us. So
that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. I'm sure she'll be happy to hear that too. So thanks on her behalf if she doesn't get to tune in for this episode. But yeah, no, I mean, I dug the photos too. I thought her photos are always great. It's funny, as I told Dan when I recommended Caroline to him, like she doesn't do much photography for events like this. So she mostly does like personal portrait photography, and like she does weddings and a few other things like that, but not a lot of like, corporate or business or big event photography like this. And so, I figured she would do a good job, but I mean, most of the samples of her work that Dan was able to look at were just like personal and portrait photography. Right. So yeah, but I mean, she's just great. So I'm not surprised she did a great job.
Totally agree. So hopefully there will be a separate short podcast interview that goes along with this, but just in case, we've covered our bases here. Let's move on. Let's talk about your series on the Tarrasch defense.
Yeah.
Right now, the July issue contains the 5th of 6 installments, and I have just finished laying out the 6th installment, which, by the way, Alex, let me tell you, was a real pain in the tuchus.
Oh, was it?
This was a tough one to lay out, and I'll explain why when we get off the call. Let's talk about the Tarrasch a bit.
Yeah.
I came to you and asked you to write this, and asked if you'd be interested, really, because I know you play the Tarrasch,
right?
And I don't think we're giving away any secrets here, because anyone can look in the database and find these things out. Why is the Tarrasch a good opening for improving players to pick up?
Yeah, so this is something that I try to convey clearly in my series, like the reasons why I'm recommending it. Some of the main reasons are, first of all, that it's a sort of system opening. So you can play it not just against D4, but against Knight F3, against C4, against G3. I'm talking about move 1 here. So it's sort of a one-size-fits-all opening for everything except for 1E4. So that's a big benefit especially for club level players, which is what my series is explicitly aimed toward. So for club level players, I mean, I remember when I was a club level player, I had very poor preparation for 1 Knight F3 and 1 C4 and 1 G3. And of course, the people who played those moves against me were usually like stronger club players than me, or like, master level players. And so, I was underprepared. They were already stronger than me, and I just got atrocious positions every time. I mean, I remember this one, like 1900, when I was like a 1200 as a kid, who, I feel like I lost to him like 4 or 5 times in the English as black, and so the Tarrasch is like an opening that you can play against the English, and then they don't even get to play their normal English stuff. It's like just going to be a Tarrasch, or it's going to be, some Tarrasch-like thing. So that's one of the big benefits. Another big benefit, and this is something that I think you had in mind from the get-go when you asked me to write this series, is that the Tarrasch leads to very classic pawn structures, like the isolated queen's pawn and some other ones that I talk about, like hanging pawns, stuff like that. And so it's these are classic things that chess players should learn at some point in their development. And so to play an opening where you are constantly getting these standard pawn structures, it's just like a great way to learn about the rich, positional and tactical ideas in those structures, which will help your chess in general. I mean, not just because you'll get isolated queen pawn structures from other openings, but just because, like, knowing about isolated queen pawn structures will help you even in unrelated, even in other structures. Understanding the balance between strategic and tactical factors and stuff like that. Stuff that happens all the time in isolated queen pawn structures and other structures like that will just help you become a better chess player in general. So, like I said, that's something that I think you had in mind from the get-go, and you've reiterated that along the way of us doing these various installments in the series. And so, yeah, I think that has come out in the series pretty well. So some of the feedback I've gotten from readers is that they felt like it was that was very beneficial to them to have the sort of structure-oriented explanations and stuff. So, yeah, those are two of the biggest reasons why I recommend this opening in my series and to a lot of my students too.
What kind of research and work did you do to sort of craft the repertoire? I mean, was it based heavily in personal experience? Did you, how did you go about choosing the specific lines that you did?
A lot of it was personal experience. So I have many tournament games as black in the Tarrasch, also as white, and a ton more online games in the Tarrasch with both colors. And I save all of those games in my own personal database, and I analyze them. And so almost all of that analysis was already done ahead of time, even before you asked me to write this series. And so, probably I had to do less work than some other people, like the latest book by Cyrus Lakdawala on an opening that he doesn't play yet. He probably has to do a lot of new original research and play a lot of games, maybe online blitz games himself to get more experience in the opening if he doesn't already play it himself. But for me, I mean, I already have been playing this for a long time. So yes, a lot of it was personal experience. Now, I also did do some new original research while I was writing the series, because a few of the lines in the series are not the lines that I've mostly played. So, like, for example, in part 5 in this issue, talking about playing against White's various sidelines, like the London and stuff like that, the Collie. Some of those lines and some of those move orders are like not the normal move orders that I choose. Like, for example, D4, D5, Knight C3. Usually I play Knight F6, but in the installment, my recommendation is 2E6. I mean, I was trying to sort of make it unified, where black is playing 2E6 almost all the time when white doesn't play, So anyway, so I did have to do some original research for some of those lines, and so I'm using ChessBase, I'm using Mega Database, I'm looking at games of strong players. I'm also sort of revisiting the books and stuff that I have on the Tarrasch, which is going to be discussed in part 6 coming up. Yeah, sort of all the normal resources that an openings analyst would use.
One of the things that I've noticed, when I was going through and checking your work and trying to make sure there was nothing that needed to be tweaked or changed, is that the engines tend to really like the attacking side, so to speak. They like white against the Tarrasch. There does seem to be a bias against the Tarrasch for people who listen to Stockfish very heavily. Why do you think the engines dislike playing with the isolated queen pawn so much? And the reason I ask is that if I'm a little older than you are, but I remember in the mid 90s, when Fritz 3 and Fritz 3 in particular, when it was starting to beat grandmasters, and it was always playing for the isolated queen pawn because for some reason the activity that it got was enough to cover up for some of the strategic weaknesses that the engines had at that time. And now things seem to have switched. I mean, the Tarrasch seems a bit dodgy for our Silicon friends. Is that something we need to worry about as club players?
It's a really interesting insight, which I didn't know. I didn't know that computers used to be more keen on those structures than they are now. But regardless, I don't think it should be particularly worrisome for players below a certain level, and that level is like higher than my level. So like all the way up to FM level or maybe beyond, Stockfish saying that, a certain Tarrasch standard theoretical position is like plus 0.6 or something for white. I just don't think I think that is just above our pay grade as like, non-international professional players. Because, like if your games are being decided by, getting a zero face, being 0.6 for white out of the opening, then wow, you and your opponent must be playing extremely accurately after that for that to be the margin of like victory. I mean, first of all, it's not the margin of victory. I mean, when you think about it from a really hyper objective sense, 0.6 is not winning for white. And so if it's not winning for white, then it's playable. I mean, this stuff like slight advantage, clear advantage, these things don't exist in reality. They're just ways that Stockfish, they're just like sort of approximations by Stockfish, because it's not seeing all the way to mate from move 10, So, assuming that it's not like a forced loss, then it's playable. And everything in between a forced draw and a forced loss is sort of up for debate. It's up for preference, And so personally, for my preference, I like having an opening that has these advantages of being systematic and teaching me about chess in general. And to me, and I think to a lot of club players, like that's much more important and beneficial than having a position where Stockfish emphatically says 0.0 or something like that, And by the way, there are players much stronger than I am who have the same attitude. I mean, just think about all the people who play the King's Indian Defense. The King's Indian Defense is also an opening that Stockfish thinks is like at least plus 0.6 for white. And yet everybody and their mother plays it, including like some of the strongest GMs in the world. So like, if Nakamura can get away with playing the King's Indian in the FIDE Grand Prix, then you and I can get away with playing the Tarrasch in whatever tournaments we're playing in against similarly rated players. That's my attitude.
Well said. I like that, and I think we're of the same mindset here. It's the Tarrasch. I'm certainly not a particularly strong player, but I know learning it and studying the structures and being forced to play actively was good for my chess because it made me work on a part of my game that I was not naturally comfortable with. So anytime you can stretch yourself and expand your comfort zone a little bit, I think that's probably a good thing. And I will say, working on this project with you has brought the opening back into my game. I shouldn't tell people that because I know everyone's preparing for me listening to this podcast, for the club nights here in Omaha. but yeah, it's I've seen it coming back, and it's a lot of fun.
Sweet, man. That's great. That's like the best endorsement I could hear.
There you go. It's got the Hartmann seal of approval. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about how you got started. How did you learn to play chess in Nashville? What's the origin story for Alex King?
I started playing competitively when I was in middle school. My middle school had a chess club, so 5th grade, 1999. I played in my first tournament that fall semester of my 5th grade year, and I just like loved it immediately. I wasn't really like good at other sports or anything like that, but I was very sort of competitive in my own way, and so it was perfect for me. And I was also talented at it. I mean, I improved pretty quickly. I played lots of tournaments all throughout middle school and the first part of high school, so I peaked out at like 2000, 2100 in like midway through high school. And yeah, I mean, at that point, my chess went into sort of a low tide because I got a lot more focused on music for a few years. But then eventually, my chess tide rose again, sort of at the end of college. And I went to college in Los Angeles, and so then when I started playing again,
What were you going to college for? Why go from Nashville to LA? Was it the sunshine? Was it? What exactly drew you there?
I was studying music at USC. So first of all, USC has a very notable music program. The sunshine, sure. I mean, we get plenty of sunshine down here in Tennessee, but it's a different vibe out there in LA in many ways. That's for sure.
And what instruments were you playing?
At the time, I was focusing on the double bass, which you, but not our viewers, can see behind me in my workroom here. But you know, I always played a lot of piano too, and when I stopped playing music professionally and started doing chess professionally, which was around the time that I, started playing chess again at the end of college, I kind of stopped playing the bass as much and mostly focused on piano. I mean, now a lot of the music that I play is just by myself here in my room. So it's a lot more fun to play piano by yourself than to play the double bass by yourself. It's a much better solo instrument. So anyway, but yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I went out to LA to study music. There were a lot of other benefits too, great food and being, near the ocean and being far from my parents and other, fun stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, when I left LA and I moved to New York in 2012 to start teaching chess, actually that was the last time I was ever in LA. I have not been back I have not been back to LA even once in the past 10 years since I left. So I've left it behind.
I got to tell you, I appreciate you doing the segues for me, because I was going to go straight from Southern California to being in New York. But before we get there, it feels like this is a good time to talk about chess and music. People often say that there are only three realms in which, prodigies really are prodigies, right? Like chess, music, and mathematics. And there have been books written about the relationship between chess and music, or the relationship between genius in the two fields, and whether or not there's some sort of relationship there. What do you think attracts people to chess and music? Is there a similar mindset? Is there a similar, quality of the soul, so to speak, that brings the two together? Do you find some sort of synergy between music and chess in your life?
I absolutely find in my own life a synergy between chess and music. I have never been able 100% to put my finger on like what is the connection between them. I get this question a lot. And so I think about it a lot. I haven't quite cracked the case though. I mean, something that's similar about those two fields is that they both are sort of like their own dimension, their own sort of language. So, I'm sure that you and I both know a lot of chess players who don't have a lot of real world savvy or skills, and yet they can still excel.
No.
And yet they can still excel in chess. I was certainly like that when I first started playing chess competitively in 5th grade. And same thing with musicians. There's a lot of musicians who are, not highly functional in the real world, but they're highly functional in music. And so I think that's somehow a similarity between them, where like they are closed or semi-closed arenas in which people can excel, even if they are deficient in certain general purpose skills. So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of prodigies are like that. They are people who wouldn't necessarily excel in the real world as normal people. They can only excel as exceptional people. they can really excel as exceptional people, but they need a sort of arena in which to safely do that. And so chess is like that, and I think music is like that, and maybe math too, although I'm not any kind of math prodigy. So yeah, the fact that they're sort of separate dimensions, they're all very abstract. Music, chess, and math are all very abstract, and so they involve a lot of sort of abstract reasoning, spatial reasoning, making connections between things that are often unconventional, maybe, or unexpected. So, they're also very creative in my mind. I think that chess, to me, is a very creative activity, and I don't think everybody sees it that way or experiences it that way, but I certainly do. Same thing with math. I read these interviews with these like genius Fields Medal winning mathematicians or whatever, and they all seem to really consider it a creative activity. And so somehow the creative side of it, I think, is also something that unites those fields. But again, I don't have it all worked out. This is just sort of my hunch. In my own experience, chess and music are certainly, they feel very similar. I've talked about this before with other people, but yeah, they feel very similar. They inspire me in similar ways. I love them in similar ways. So
I like the way that you spoke about them as both being a sort of language, and on a very basic level, anyone can appreciate a chess game if they know the moves, and anyone can appreciate a pretty song, but very precise changes in a jazz standard aren't going to be heard by a lot of people in the way that I suspect you'd hear them. And the same thing would be, certain moves, I would imagine, in a chess game that may not have the same beauty for others because they don't have the experience or understanding to see why it could be so beautiful. We could talk about this all day. I did want to sort of follow up with two questions about it. There is this sort of competitiveness among chess players, and not just because it's a two-person game, but it's also, the rating factor that we all have this, especially today with the adult improver and chess punk hashtags, where we're trying to optimize ourselves and optimize our learning and trying to sort of, show who's more ascetic than others in studying 7 hours a day and this sort of thing. Is there that same sort of competitiveness in the music world? Is there something different about chess that lends itself to that competitiveness, in your opinion?
Well, I think that it's a bit of a different culture. Chess is seen by many as sort of like a proxy for intelligence in a way that music is not. And so I think chess more attracts these type of people who are trying to like hack, XYZ aspect of their life and then like optimize it, rather than music, which is like, music is, it's very difficult to figure out what the point of music is, what the goal is. It's very open-ended.
I feel the same way about chess sometimes, though. Maybe that's personal. I'm not sure.
There's not necessarily a specific goal in music like there is in chess, where the goal is to win. So because of that, music, it's hard to hack because it's much less clear how good you are at it or whether you've won or not. And so, it's just more open-ended. So it's somewhat less competitive in that way. And I think it attracts, often attracts a different type of person, from the sort of, from the sort of people you're describing. So, now, there's still a lot of competition in music. I would say that a lot of the competition in music is professional, because there's a lot more music professionals than there are chess professionals. And so that, I guess, is the aspect of music that the competitiveness gets channeled into. Whereas, in chess, all these adult improvers are like obviously not competing with each other for like chess teaching jobs. They're competing with each other, in terms of their ratings or their, the self-punishingness of their study routines or their, Twitter wittiness or whatever it is that they're competing with each other on. So it's a different vibe in that sense. I like to think of myself as always trying to improve at chess and at music, but I got to say something about this adult improver culture turns me off. Even the term adult improver, I find sort of off-putting. It's like saying that you play adult chess or something like that. It's like trying to protect yourself from the dangerous kids, somehow.
Well, but this is where you and I think are in a slightly different place, because you're a very talented chess player, and whereas I am the typical run-of-the-mill Potzer who has dreams of getting back to 1900. I was almost there. I was one fabled day. I was almost there, and then everything just fell apart. And I certainly, it is frustrating to sink time into something and to try to get better, and then to play a kid who wipes the board with you, while eating Dunkaroos and drinking a juice box. And I think everybody who's listening to this will understand that. And so, on the one hand, I absolutely get the imperative to sort of take the neoliberal, self-improvement model, right? Where we've optimized all the other forms of our life and we're going to optimize our hobbies. But that's the part for me that I can't do. It's got to be fun. And I realize that probably, I just got a book of Samagin's games by Michal Marin. I realize playing over Samagin's games is probably not going to be the thing that gets my chess to be the best it can be. But sometimes I just want to have a cocktail and look over a fun game. And I think that's okay. And I think that's got to be okay for most of us, or we're going to burn out.
Yeah, it's almost like, it's almost like by being openly ambivalent about the fun side of chess, you're revealing that you don't do it to enjoy it in the first place. You just do it sort of to prove something to yourself or to hack it or something, So I think it's, I agree that often leads to burnout and frustration or, Twitter wars or whatever all these people are doing with their time. But, yeah. Okay. So when I was a kid, before I started playing chess competitively, chess was this thing that we had a chess set in the house. My grandfather had a chess set in his apartment. He had some chess books on his bookshelf next to the bridge books and next to the, Camus and next to the Cezanne. Whatever, it was just another aspect of being a cultured person. And a grand piano in his apartment, and whiskey. I don't drink whiskey like you do, but it was all sort of the same thing. Wait,
what are we talking about?
I just mean I
just have a little.
I just mean I didn't absorb that aspect of his cultural life, but I don't know. It just seemed like just a part of living a cultured life, and so I still think of it that way. I still think of chess and music as these things that just are part of living the good life, and not the good rich life either. Just the good cultured middle class person life. And so yeah, I don't know. There's something about that. There's something where that's not present in some of these people, who approach it purely from a hack the hack the chess sort of perspective. So
this is not at all where I expected our conversation to go. And now we're going to get a lot of letters, Alex. Well, I'm going to get a lot of letters and you'll probably just get hate mail on Facebook, but that's fine. Let me ask you one more question about the relationship between chess and music. And then we'll move on. It's interesting you mentioned Cezanne. And the reason I ask this is, before I was a chess writer and editor, I thought I was going to be a philosopher. And my training was in phenomenology. And I read of a lot of Maurice Merleau-Ponty, who talked about synesthesia, which is the sort of different sensory fields becoming coextensive. Sometimes chess moves have a certain color for me.
Yeah.
Like they're blue or red and I don't know why. I'm not like I'm not an artist, but they have that feeling for me sometimes. Do chess moves ever have tones or song or sounds for you?
Yeah, I don't know. Like not in any kind of surface level way, but it's all sort of swishing together in the brain box for me. A lot of times I'm thinking about chess while I'm playing the piano, or I'm thinking about music while I'm playing chess, or I'm thinking about both while I'm doing the dishes, or when I'm falling asleep, or this and that. So, yeah. I don't know if I have any particular synesthesia, but they're right up next to each other, at least. So
let's jump to the time in your life when you moved to New York to teach.
Yeah,
I suspect. You were teaching for chess in the schools. Is that correct?
And when I moved there, right at the beginning when I moved there, I was planning to work for chess in the schools, but then I got hired by the Marshall Chess Club, and I just started doing a lot of independent teaching work, lessons, and doing like 1 day a week school programs for various different schools. I was working for Beatrice, and I was working for Nelson Dunn, and so just some working for the Marshall, school programs and lessons and stuff. So yeah, I ended up not working for chess in the schools because I was sort of there was also a period where I worked for Success Academy, teaching there. That was not full time. It was just like a halftime gig. But anyway, so yeah, eventually it just became all freelance, private lessons and Marshall Chess Club stuff.
What was that like for your game? I mean, Nashville, a lot of chess players, but it's not New York.
Mm-hmm.
Los Angeles, the same sort of thing. You get to New York and you get to the Marshall, which I think by that time, the Manhattan was, dead and buried.
Yeah.
But this is the epicenter of chess in one of the epicenters of chess in America.
Yeah.
What was it like to be there every day?
It was absolutely fantastic, just from a cultural perspective and the perspective of enriching my life. And I played an incredible ton of chess while I was there. I mean, I think I can look this up, but I think I played like over 150 tournament games a year for like multiple years while I was there. Okay, I'm looking it up now. In 2012, 13, and 14, I played over 150 tournament games each year, standard tournament games. So I was just playing a ton, which was awesome. And, meeting a lot of the, regulars of the Marshall and of the New York scene, Jay Bonin, Asa Hoffman, Michael Rode, tons of people like that. With a lot of the Georgians, Kashishvili, Kekalidze, Gelishvili, Irina Krush, Lenderman, these people who were playing at the Marshall all the time. So that was fantastic. I mean, I got to play all those people many times. And but it's interesting that my rating did not change very much in the years that I lived there. I had already 2,300 USCF before I moved to New York. And in the 4 years that I was there, my rating did not increase very much. I mean, it oscillated up to 2375 and then back down to 2325 or something like that. So even though I was getting a lot of experience and I was studying a lot and I was playing a lot and I was in a very vibrant community and having a great time and enjoying it, I didn't actually make as much improvement until I left New York and moved to Memphis. And so I don't know what it was. I mean, maybe I was sort of building up latent strength that then manifested later, had to be somehow ignited by some other factor. But yeah, on paper, I was sort of plateauing even with all of this.
That gives us the perfect chance to talk about coming home, so to speak,
Yeah.
coming home to Tennessee.
Yeah.
So you were telling me off camera, you met your wife in New York.
Right.
And then she ended up becoming employed at the University of Memphis.
Right.
And so you guys, back to Memphis you go. And how far is Memphis from Nashville?
It's a 3-hour drive. So, like we still can go see my parents easily whenever we want, or they can come see us or whatever. So,
yeah. So you're back to Tennessee. You're in driving distance, but not too close. So you have excuses. And you come back to Memphis or you go to Memphis, I shouldn't say come back.
Right.
And you're teaching, and then you get involved with the Memphis Chess Club.
Yeah.
Tell me about the Memphis Chess Club.
Yeah. So the Memphis Chess Club has existed for a long time, but a couple of years ago, it sort of experienced like an identity transformation when a businessman, Casey Hill, took over the Memphis Chess Club. It was a benevolent, a friendly takeover, a voluntary takeover on by both sides. And turned it from just like your average small local chess club nonprofit into like a normal business with like a physical brick and mortar location that's also a cafe and restaurant. So this was like a very grand vision by Casey. He is like a real estate developer, or I don't know what the correct term for it is, but he owns and manages residential properties in Memphis. And so he had this lobby space of this apartment building in downtown Memphis that he could have put a Planet Fitness in, or, a bar or something. But instead he wanted to put the Memphis Chess Club in there and make it, like I said, a cafe and chess club as a business. So it's not a nonprofit, it's a business. And so as he was, planning all this stuff out, he hired me to direct the chess operations for this. So I wasn't, presiding over the cafe side of things, but over the chess side of things. And yeah, so I did a lot of the sort of planning, planning what tables we were going to purchase for the tournament room, and what chess sets we were going to purchase, and what our initial offerings were going to be in terms of our schedule and our classes and our tournaments. And I directed those tournaments and taught some of those classes all on the front end of this process. But I only did that for maybe a year, I think. Eventually, I again sort of returned to what I'm doing now, which is just all freelance stuff. Part of that is that my wife and I had a daughter in 2020, right in the first few months of the pandemic. And so with having a kid at home, we just eventually decided that it was much better for one of us to be working from home for logistical reasons, especially in the pandemic with a lot of uncertainty regarding, will daycare have to shut down and quarantine? Will someone get sick? This and that. And so, yeah, eventually I left my, my gig at the Memphis Chess Club, and now I just teach lessons online from home and write for you and other stuff like that.
You talking about your daughter. This is something that we share in common because I have a daughter who's a little older,
right?
But I did the same thing. Stayed home with her. One of the reasons that I'm so pleased to be working for US Chess is that we're distributed and I can work from home. And
yeah,
like this morning when she had a tummy ache, I could take her to summer stuff a little bit late, and that was fine.
Right. Yeah.
Being a dad and having other commitments has certainly changed my relationship to chess. It's made me less narcissistic. That may be hard for people who know me to believe. It has certainly been one of the ego-shattering, humbling experiences of my life. But part of that is that it has sort of decentered the priority of chess in my life. I suspect maybe this also has something to do with why I see myself as a chess amateur as opposed to an adult improver.
Uh-huh.
I'm wondering what effect this has had, the experience of being a father has had on your chess game. Do you think it's changed your relationship at all, or is it still too early to tell?
It might be too early to tell in some ways, but in other ways, it seems clearly to not have changed my relationship to chess on a fundamental level. I mean, maybe one of the most obvious ways that it's changed my chess life is that I certainly play in fewer tournaments than I used to because I just have less time to do that. And yet I still play a lot online. And when I do play in tournaments, I still enjoy them thoroughly. I don't think of them as, I mean, they're not more stressful now than they used to be. I mean, I don't appear to be performing worse in them than I used to be. I mean, I've had some of my best results of my life in the past year. And so it doesn't seem to have affected my strength in a negative way. I guess maybe I do study a bit less than I used to, because again, I just have less time in general. But I still get to do some studying. So I don't know. I mean, it hasn't changed my love for chess. And now I'm even getting to share some of that love with Cecily, my daughter. You know, she's like learning the names of the pieces and stuff like that. So that's cool. But yeah, I actually think, I know that this is going to sound crazy, but like, I actually think that all of the stress and trying aspects of parenthood maybe have actually helped my chess in some way. It's like what you're saying. It sort of shakes you out of your own head a bit and forces you to like, juggle a lot of things at once. And there's actually can be some chess benefit to that, you know? I mean, especially since I was sort of stuck in a rut, a plateau for a long time, like in the 2300s USCF, and then sort of being jolted out of that, forced to do a whole bunch of new things and carry Cecily with one hand while I open the door with another hand, while I, avoid stepping on a Lego, while I plan, when I do the dishes and all this other stuff. And
oh God, you the Legos. Oh, I'm past that phase, but I have not forgotten the
So somehow it feels like it's helped me in chess. Now I don't know if I'm going to be able to ride that out indefinitely. I mean, somebody made a joke about this. My wife and I are having another daughter in November, and thank you. Somebody on Facebook said, "Okay, one daughter you make FM, the second daughter you make IM." I mean, I don't know whether it's going to be exchangeable for currency all the way like that. But
no pressure, Alex. Jeez.
But hey, whatever. I'm cautiously optimistic about it, I guess. So yeah, I don't know. It hasn't. In many ways, it has not changed chess for me. The biggest way is that I play less, play fewer tournaments.
Well, this definitely leads into the last thing I wanted to talk about with you before we take our little quiz.
Here we go.
You're living in Memphis. You are one of the top players in the city, and one of the top players in the state.
Yeah.
You are not getting to face regular opposition of your own strength.
Right.
You're having to travel to places like Charlotte or New York to do that. And it's certainly great that those opportunities exist. But what is it like trying to stay sharp when you're one of the very top dogs? And how do you prevent, your rating getting bled away by having to play lower rated players all the time?
Yeah, well, I mean, so first of all, just from a mathematical perspective, again, I'm not a mathematician, but to my understanding, playing lower rated players per se is not the issue. The issue is playing underrated players. So playing lower rated players should not in itself be bad for your rating, because the rating system is designed for your rating to reflect your strength regardless of your opposition. But if your opponents are lower rated and underrated, then yes, that can be bad. But in Memphis, at least, there's not. I mean, since it's a bit of a smaller chess market, there's not a constant influx of like new players who are potentially very underrated. And so I don't actually feel like I play particularly underrated players that often, like I would if I went and played in the World Open every year. I mean, I played in the World Open last year, and I definitely played some underrated players, and I had to fight for my life not to lose more rating points than I did. I managed to sort of redeem myself. I mean, like I lost to like down 400 points FIDE in the first round to a very strong young player, and so I think the risk is higher when you go play in a big open tournament like that for playing underrated players than just playing the same people in your local scene who have accurate ratings and who you've been playing for a long time. So, but regardless of the underrated thing or the rating thing, I think a lot of people would lose steam and lose motivation playing lower rated players, even accurately lower rated players all the time, being the top dog, not getting to play higher rated players enough. And I do miss that. I mean, of course I can play higher rated players online, but as far as, standard tournament games, but I don't know, for me, maybe I'm a sadist, but I don't mind like playing lower rated players a lot and just trying to like score 100%, whenever possible. I don't mind that. And also I think my workflow of fastidiously saving and analyzing all of my tournament games, regardless, and even many of my casual and online games, regardless of the rating of my opponent, and noting all the good and bad things that I did, regardless of who I played or whether I destroyed them or not. I mean, I think that workflow has been beneficial in not having me like atrophy or lose motivation or get complacent or anything like that, because I'm still critiquing every game I play, with saving it and analyzing it. So I mean, even if I play a 1700 and I beat them pretty easily, if I go back and analyze it afterward and I find one mistake, I mean, okay, there we go. I mean, it's not a perfect game. I get to critique the mistake. Maybe I even get to aggregate it into my overall like mistakes I make in the Carlsbad or mistakes I make in Rook End games or something. I don't know. It's all water under the bridge. Everything is potentially water under the bridge, So I don't know. I think that's helped a lot.
The analyzing of games and do you see that as being sort of as important for improvement as a lot of authors do? Because I think there's some dispute on this now, because you'll hear people say, that there are, IMs who, just run the game through the engine and they're done with it. And, whereas you seem to be espousing the old Botvinnik style, analyze, or Jesse Cry style.
Hold on. I gotta interrupt you, John. I do not subscribe to Jesse Cry's annotation philosophy, nor Botvinnik's annotation philosophy. I certainly use the engine from the get-go when I analyze my games, and I do not write a novella handwritten about my games. Okay. But I don't just flick through the moves on my phone and then I save the game. I analyze it manually with the computer. I save the analysis in my database. I then aggregate these data points into larger patterns and trends. Like I said, things I'm doing wrong in the Carlsbad, or I'm always missing the knight h5 move, regardless of the structure, or I'm not pushing my passed pawn in the middle game enough, regardless of the structure, or I'm constantly not putting my rook behind a passed pawn in the endgame, or whatever it is. So I manually generate data using the computer, as high quality data as I can within a reasonable time frame, and I aggregate that data as best I can.
What's a reasonable time frame, just out of curiosity, per game?
I mean, I spend like sometimes as little as 5 minutes on a single game analyzing it, if it's like a crushing win with not a lot of inaccuracies by me. But then I also try not to spend more than like 30 minutes on a single game. So I try to keep it smooth and sustainable, because I think it's much more important to analyze as many games as you can with a certain minimum level of thoroughness, then, it's sort of like 80-20. I mean, you can spend 20% of the time and get 80% quality data. And then to get the remaining, 20% quality data, you have to spend 80% of the time. And it's just not sustainable if the goal is to be sort of analyzing as many of your games as possible and then aggregating them. I mean, yeah, you can spend, a week analyzing one game, but I don't think it has that much added benefit. And meanwhile, you didn't do anything else that week. You didn't study tactics. You didn't study end games. All you did was sort of indulge in analyzing this one thing. And that's sort of how I feel about the Jesse Cry method. I have a lot of other thoughts about it, but I don't want to, hijack the conversation.
Next, you can write this up for Chess Life, and we'll have another one of these cover stories.
There we go.
We are about an hour in, so I do want to wrap. But before we do that, I'm not sure if you listen to the podcast regularly, but if you do,
I vaguely remember that you have a lightning round, don't you?
It's kind of like a lightning round. So what I like to do is I like to ask everyone a series of questions that were made famous by the inimitable James Lipton on Inside the Actors Studio.
Right.
Now, what's curious is that Lipton actually got these questions from Bernard Pivot, who he himself based them on questionnaires that Marcel Proust would ask himself and write down the answers. So I've modified them for a family-friendly audience and to avoid a few things that may not work for this format. But Alex King, are you ready to answer the chess version of James Lipton's questionnaire?
I'm ready.
All right. I'm going to bring it. Here we go. Alex King, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word? I use definitely a lot.
All right. What is your least favorite word?
My least favorite word. It's going to be one of these buzzwords of the moment. Content creator. That's my least favorite phrase currently.
Man, we are going to get so many letters after this.
I think it's offensive. Yeah, I think it's offensive to call. I mean, it would be like calling Proust or Cezanne a content creator. It's just absolutely offensive and inappropriate.
Shots fired. All right. What is your dream of happiness?
Just living a normal middle-class life where I don't get, burdened with the crushing medical debt or one of the other hazards of modern American life. Just living a normal, comfortable life, not being rich, but also not, being painfully, strugglingly poor either. The American dream.
I'm going to keep my mouth quiet right now. Towards what faults do you feel most indulgent?
Impracticality, as my wife will attest. Just sort of following my dreams and my instincts and not, thinking enough about what's actually reasonable. My wife always makes fun of me. Once, we were, when my wife and I were moving in together, I was going to move my bed frame from the apartment that I was living in into our shared apartment and wouldn't fit through the door. And I was proposing this ludicrously impractical solution involving sawing off the headboard. So she always uses this phrase, saw off the headboard, to as a metaphor for whatever my latest ludicrously impractical idea is.
Who would you like to see on a new banknote?
Maurice Ravel, my favorite composer.
The deep cuts here. I like this. Alex, what opening do you love?
The Tarrasch is up there. And I also really like the French. Those might be my top two.
What opening do you hate?
What opening do I hate? The Queen's Gambit accepted. I struggle a lot to get an advantage against the Queen's Gambit accepted as white.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
For several years, I have wondered whether I could become a computer programmer. I have a lot of students who are computer programmers, and I'm with that skill set and their ability to do crazy computer things. So, I guess in another life, I could be a computer programmer.
What profession would you not like to do?
Something in business or finance. I find those fields philosophically troubling and also very unappealing from a day-to-day quality of life perspective.
Last question. FIDE master, father, content creator, Alex King. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Let's see. Something in Yiddish. I'm trying to think of something specific. Well, I don't want to use profanity, but anything in Yiddish would be fine.
Fair enough. Yeah, the profanity would be tough. I've had to catch myself a couple times over the years in this.
Every Yiddish word is at least somewhat profane, so it's tough. Yeah,
and that's why I like what I know of it. Alex, if anyone wants to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to find you on social media or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm they can find me on Facebook. I'm just under my real name, Alex King. I'm now on Twitter as Alex King Chess, and that's also my email address, alexkingchess@gmail. My new email address. So I'm also on Lee Chess. I have an unpronounceable and unspellable name on Lee Chess, but if you Google my name and Lee Chess, my name's listed on my profile. You can find me that way. Any of those avenues is great. I welcome all the hate mail and the love mail and everything in between.
You said it. I didn't. Alex, this really this has been a delight, and I suspect we're going to get some comments, but bring it on. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I've loved it too, John. Thanks so much for, first of all, having me write the piece, all the other pieces that you've had me write for the magazine, and thanks for having me on the podcast. And I found the conversation delightful too, so let's do it again sometime.
Brilliant. All right, Alex, thank you so much.
All right, thanks, John.
Thank you for listening to this edition of Cover Stories with Chess Life. Our podcast will return next month on the first Tuesday, when we will again be making a deep dive into the pages of Chess Life magazine. US Chess is a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose educational mission is to empower people, enrich lives, and enhance communities through chess. To become a member, go to uschess.org and click on the Join button, where you can find a membership option that is right for you. As a member, you enjoy rated play, print and digital copies of Chess Life or Chess Life Kids, and you help US Chess grow the game. If you're already a member, consider clicking on the donate button at uschess.org. Our podcasts are produced and edited by Jason Andre at Seven Season Films Photography and Media. Please visit sevenseasonfilms.com to find out how to start your own podcast. Thank you, and good chess.